And the movie starts with a documentary filmmaker named Laura Poitras and a columnist of The Guardian named Glenn Greenwald, who are waiting for Edward Snowden. A few minutes later, Edward came to them and they share a special code to confirmation, which is what time does the restaurant open? Noon. But the food's a little too spicy. Edward took them to his hotel room and seized their phone in a microwave for security reasons. Then, Laura Poitras and Glenn Greenwald start their recording. Glenn said, "Can he start by telling us why he did what he did and how he gained access to such a vast amount of information and all?" But Laura stopped him in the middle and said that they will start with his name and the story of Edward begin here. The leading character, named Edward Joseph Snowden, 29 years old, worked as a private contractor for the NSA and also worked as a private contractor for the CIA and directly for the agency. Actually, he worked in various jobs in the intelligence industry for the last 9 years as a systems engineer, then a solutions consultant, and also a senior advisor for the Central Intelligence Agency, whose dream was to be a soldier. He begins his story from his soldier training days that after intense testing, Snowden qualified for the 18 X-ray program. This program was designed for soldiers with the highest physical and mental abilities. The hope was that these soldiers would later become Special Forces sergeants. Before enlisting, Snowden and the other talented soldiers had to attend basic training at Fort Benning, Georgia, in 2004. Only a few months in, Snowden fractured his ankle, and he could not continue his military training, which gave him time to think about his future to serve his country. Snowden applies for a position at the Central Intelligence Agency, CIA, and subsequently undergoes the screening process. During the CIA joining interview, he was questioned by Corbin O'Brien that why does he want to join the CIA, and how would he explain the internet to a child? Edward replied that Granddad retired as an admiral and joined the FBI, and also added that the internet is a technology that has the power to let everyone in the world understand each other. At last, Edward Snowden was again questioned. Why does he want to join the CIA? He frankly said, "Sir, it sounds really cool to have top security clearance." Initially, his answers to the screening questions are insufficient, but Deputy Director Corbin O'Brien decides to take a chance on him, given the demands of such extraordinary times. Corbin O'Brien, senior instructor of CIA, said Edward should join his class at the Hill. The next day, while looking forward to Corbin's class, he accidentally meets with Hank Forrester, an engineer, instructor, and counselor. While training, he is educated and tested on cyber warfare. He learns about the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, which circumvents the Fourth Amendment rights of U.S. citizens by allowing warrant requests to be approved by a panel of judges that were appointed by the Chief Justice. In class, Snowden and his peers are they going to start with an aptitude test. Each of them is going to build a covert communications network in their home city. They're going to deploy it, back up their site, destroy it, and restore it again. The point of this exercise is to keep their infrastructure up and running securely. The average test time is 5 hours. If they take more than 8, they will fail. But Edward finished the whole thing in 38 minutes. He broke the sequence to save time and automated the backup process to run as he built the site. And finally, Snowden impresses O'Brien when he completes the exercise in 38 minutes. Next, in Washington, D.C., via a dating website called hotornot.com, users rate others' pictures and talk to them. Here, Snowden met Lindsay Mills, and they started dating. His role as the CIA's Directorate of Support meant Snowden helped manage servers for the CIA's Washington metropolitan area. After 9 months of working in the private sector, Snowden applied and was accepted to work a CIA tech job abroad. Before starting, Snowden had to train as a Technical Information Security Officer, TISO, for 6 months. Snowden acquires his first post abroad working with diplomatic cover in Geneva in 2007 and takes Mills with him. While working in Geneva, Snowden found himself in the middle of the U.S. transition to technology-based intelligence. Snowden worked with the CIA case officers to help them navigate new technology. He taught these officers how to mask themselves on the internet and remain anonymous online. Snowden enjoyed his job, but he had yet to realize the full potential of the technology he was working with. Here, he meets Gabriel Sull, who has ample experience in electronic surveillance. Snowden begins questioning his ethical implications of their assignment. After his superior decides to set up their target on a DUI charge in order to coerce information from him, Snowden resigns from the CIA. The report detailed a program named Stellar Wind, which was the NSA's most closely guarded secret. Since 2001, the program has been collecting communications through metadata. Metadata allows intelligence to know where you are at any moment, who you've been communicating with, and everything in your browser history. It can tell where you've been and even where you are headed next. In other words, Stellar Wind was a massive surveillance program that enabled the US government to spy on its citizens at all times. A government may not infringe into that domain of personal or individual freedoms that during the American Revolution was called liberty, and during the Internet Revolution is called privacy. Keeping this knowledge a secret hurt Snowden and caused him to fall into depression. He also began to experience seizures on top of his already debilitating depression. During a hunting trip, O'Brien reveals an operation in Oahu that revolves around counterattacking Chinese hackers. After Snowden is diagnosed with epilepsy, Mills agrees that he should join the operation, for she believes the environment in Hawaii may be beneficial for his health. To help recover from his illness, Snowden took an NSA position in Hawaii. He decided to use his extra time to learn more about the NSA surveillance program. So, Snowden stayed up to date on technology by checking the NSA's reading boards. Snowden needed to come up with a way to streamline his browsing and make it more efficient. So, Snowden created a program called Heartbeat. Heartbeat compiled any new information and reports from these reading boards into a single news feed. It was through Heartbeat that Snowden obtained most of the documents that he would later share with journalists. This includes an order that allowed the NSA to collect metadata from companies like Verizon and AT&T. The order also included PRISM, which enabled the NSA to collect data from major companies like Google, Yahoo, Facebook, and Apple. PRISM collects stored internet communications based on demands made to internet companies such as Google Inc. under Section 702 of the FISA Amendments Act of 2008 to turn over any data that match court-approved search terms. The NSA used these PRISM requests to target communications that were encrypted when they traveled across the internet backbone to focus on stored data that telecommunication filtering systems discarded earlier, and to get data that is easier to handle, among other things. Snowden understood how difficult it would be to leak this information and kept his identity hidden. To solve this issue, Snowden started by using the Heartbeat program he created to access the documents he needed. Then, he used old Dell PCs no longer in use at the office. From there, Snowden encrypted the data onto micro SD cards. Each encryption process could take up to 8 hours. Then, he smuggled the cards out of the building by hiding them under the tiles of his Rubik's Cube. He would hide his nervousness as he walked past guards by playing with his Rubik's Cube. When he was heading home, he tells his colleagues he is feeling ill and departed. He advises Mills to fly home to Maryland, after which he contacts Poitras and Greenwald to schedule the meeting. In 2013, Snowden knew it was now or never. He was back in Hawaii when he began making preparations to expose the NSA. Snowden flew to Hong Kong, where he met Laura Poitras and Glenn Greenwald to divulge the information. On June 6, 2013, Greenwald's first story about the NSA appeared in The Guardian. It disclosed information about the court order that allowed Verizon to collect customer data. The following day, stories on PRISM were released. As the stories were released, the government frantically tried to find the source of the leak. Just a few days later, Snowden came forward as a whistleblower. Lawyers Robert Thibault and Jonathan Mann helped Snowden hide in some of the poorest neighborhoods of Hong Kong. On June 17th, the U.S. government charged Snowden under the Espionage Act and requested his extradition. Hong Kong refused to allow him sanctuary within its borders, and he had nowhere to go. Snowden applied for asylum in numerous countries, but all his requests were denied. He was stuck in Moscow. Snowden spent 40 nights sleeping at the airport, surrounded by journalists, but was soon granted temporary asylum by the Russian government. However, the U.S. government revokes his passport, forcing him to remain in Moscow indefinitely. After all these ends, he and Lindsay have adjusted to their new life in Moscow. He is eventually granted asylum for 3 years. Snowden continues his activism at a special national event, which was followed by a live chat with Edward Snowden himself, broadcast from Moscow.